Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 5th Annual Aspen Cyber Summit. I'm Vivian Schiller, Executive Director of Aspen Digital. As a reminder, you can find the full summit agenda and bios of all our speakers at aspencybersummit.org. I want to thank FireEye, Intel, and Proofpoint for making this week's summit possible and helping us convene such an important set of conversations. We would also like to acknowledge Blue Vector, SIGPA-NA, and the American Gas Association for their additional support. I am now pleased to introduce Stephanie Mehta, the editor-in-chief of Fast Company, who will be leading a discussion with 3 senior leaders of the US intelligence community about emerging technologies and driving innovation inside government. Stephanie, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you all for joining us today. As Vivian said, my name is Stephanie Mehta. I'm editor of Fast Company, and I'm so excited to be leading this conversation about driving innovation inside government. We have an amazing group of leaders who are going to help us talk about this subject, and as Vivian mentioned, you can read their full bios on the Aspen Cyber Summit site, but let me briefly go ahead and introduce them to you today. We are joined by Dr. Stacey Dixon. She is the 8th Deputy Director of the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, where she helps lead the agency and manage the national system for geospatial intelligence. She's been in this role since June of 2019, and before that, she was Director at the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency. Now, Dr. Dixon was succeeded at IARPA by our next panelist. Dr. Catherine Marsh is Director of the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity and Agency. And as head of IARPA, Dr. Marsh leads a multidisciplinary research program to help develop technologies for national intelligence missions. And prior to her role here, she served as the CIA's chief scientist in the Directorate of Science and Technology. And she also served as the DS&T's primary science advisor. Our third panelist today is Ann Neuberger. She is the director of the Cybersecurity Directorate at the National Security Agency. Ms. Neuberger's directorate is basically designed to help combat the evolving threat landscape. She's also in charge of capitalizing on the ability to set security standards and make vulnerability assessments. And she's here to enhance partnerships with Cyber Command, Homeland Security, the FBI, and of course, private industry. And we're going to be talking a lot about partnerships and private industry as part of this discussion. Welcome to all of the panelists. Let me start by asking each of the panelists, and I think we'll just go alphabetically down the road, to talk a little bit about the technologies that excite you most, and the technologies or innovations that give you pause or scare you or that seem like threats. Let's start with Dr. Dixon. What excites you and what scares you?
Thanks, Stephanie. It's interesting. For me, there's overlap there. So from the geospatial perspective and in the line of work that we're in, I'm looking mainly at satellites and the amount of information that's out there from which we can derive intelligence. So there are over 90 different constellations of Earth observing satellites that we are tracking the development of. And many of those are going to provide a lot of information that we and the government are going to be able to use. Some will be owned by other countries, some will be owned by other governments. That is a lot of data as to what's happening in our country, but more importantly for us, it's a lot of data information as to what's happening in other countries. So being able to use that, leverage automation to help us to triage through it and to leverage that information is really something that I'm really excited about. And we found even during this sort of COVID-19 time period, how much of this data has been really useful for our mission as we're trying to work in a telework environment. And we will have a chance to talk about that a little bit later. I'm also worried about it because it means that it's a lot harder to hide or protect the things that we need to be hiding and protecting. And from the intelligence perspective, it will change the way that we do business in many ways. So it's a balance of both of those things, but we need to understand it, number one. And so we in particular have created what we're calling geo-insurance, which helps us help others understand what's overhead, what others can see that we may not want them to be seeing, and how do you sort of best protect yourself. So the explosion of data, both satellite and others, is sort of both the thing that I see an opportunity in, as well as that sort of scares me at times.
Well, definitely want to come back to some of the challenges and remote work issues you referenced. Dr. Marsh, same question for you. What technologies excite you most? And then what technologies or innovations make you nervous? Oh, we need you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
So it's fascinating. Life is different. Anyhow, so for me, I'm a battery geek, and I am continue to be a battery geek. And so being excited about what the new capabilities are, because that provides us enhanced range and the ability to do things that we couldn't do, right? You know, I've been involved with that. So that's always going to be an excitement area for me because I'm a geek. You know, I'm also really excited about the advances that we see coming on in quantum and quantum computing and what that enables. So as Stacey mentioned about the large amounts of data, as we progress and push quantum computing and quantum capabilities, that's going to help with being able to process that enormous amount of data. You know, but from what scares the living daylights out of me is really the bioterrorism kinds of capabilities that are out there, the ability and easy access to mutate genes, right, to genetically edit things, and then unintentionally or intentionally create some sort of a backlash as a consequence of that could make things dangerous in the world. So I worry about that, and I worry about you know, ubiquitous sensors and the enormous amount of data that's out there everywhere that is being collected about our people as they try to move around in this world. I think that those are the things that I really have to worry about.
Yeah, fascinating. And we'll, again, want to come back and talk about all of those things. Director Neuberger, what scares you, but more importantly, what excites you?
I love the order of that question. You're right. What's more important is what excites. So the first thing above all is machine learning. It gives us the opportunity to perform analysis at a level of complexity deeper than humans can. For example, machine language enabled software reverse engineering with tools like Ghidra, which we open sourced recently. And it also enables us to make better, faster decisions. As Dr. Dixon talked about, we look at the broad scale of data that's available and actually sorting and prioritizing data, video, speech, image, and text analytics, and enabling us to make decisions faster, particularly in the national security community. You can come to conclusions faster. From a cybersecurity perspective, identify more quickly, classify malware, really promising in terms of an opportunity. You know, a second area of opportunity that I'm really excited about is really what's happening in the space industry, where on the technology side, we see much more highly integrated systems, hosted payloads, so we can take advantage in the national security world of commercial technologies, certainly larger constellations and explosion of space companies. On the flip side of that, you know, our mission here, one of our missions is we build a cryptography that protects the nation's most sensitive systems across the national security missions. And as such, in order to take advantage of, I'll talk specifically about the second item, about the space industry, we know we need to come up with different approaches to, for example, allow us to do crypto at low size, weight, and power, allow us to provide crypto for proliferated constellations. So with those opportunities both comes creative things we need to approach and do, as well as potential risks of how we defend against adversaries using those same kind of interesting technologies for harm.
You know, in just 5 minutes, we've covered a dizzying array of topics. We've covered bio threats and biotechnology. We've covered space. We've covered satellites. I'd love to hear from each of you how you stay on top of all of these sort of cutting edge of evolutions and developments. I understand it's your job, but I just love to hear a little bit more about how you ensure that you are staying on top of all of the innovation and developments that are coming out of your own labs, as well as what we're seeing more broadly in the technology community. Maybe we'll go the other way. I'll start with Anne and then work our way to Dr. Marsh and Dr. Dixon.
Absolutely. So first, I think one of the things each of our organizations takes great pride in is building technical depth, recruiting people in diverse technical areas, and ensuring that we give them a way to continue to develop their skills, as well as maintain partnerships with the academic sector across the national security community, as well as with the broader private sector R&D labs, in order to understand different technologies, understand their mission application, and understand their level of maturity. So first and above all, it takes a team, and building that team and understanding in each of our organizations what our deep comparative advantage is. At NSA, for example, cryptography is a big area of focus. We make codes, we break codes. So areas like quantum resistant cryptography that was mentioned earlier has been a big area of focus for us. Because we know we play a key role in those technologies. Areas like machine learning, because we know we have large amounts of data and we need to quickly make sense of it and enable others to make decisions off of that. And then certainly areas like telecommunication standards and areas 5G, 6G. So for us, and for us both as an organization and personally, it's first ensuring you've built the internal team in areas that you know is your deep bench, is an area that people and organizations look to you to maintain expertise, and then building the broad set of partnerships so that you have both positive indications and negative warnings about technologies that you need to be aware of in terms of impact to the national security mission.
Dr. Marsh, same question for you. You know, how do you stay abreast of everything that's happening in the world?
You can't stay abreast of everything, but I second exactly what Anne says, is you can't know everything, but you can surround yourself with really smart people. And we do that. We network, we rely on our network. No program in here, we always have our partners across the IC at all of our program reviews, at all of the work that we're doing, from our new start pitch all the way through to help with the catch, if you will, of the technology at the end of the day. And so relying on our government partners and our experts across the nation who are that true expert. I mean, if you wanted to know battery stuff, you'd come and you'd talk to me, right? But if you want quantum computing, you're going to go talk to Jack Blakestad, right? So it's making sure you know who those folks are that you can tap into, and get the rudder steered correctly for you, and ensure all along the way that we're doing that. And the other thing that Anne said that is spot on, hiring the best and brightest minds, right? Bringing them to bear on our problems is what works. And so how do you do that, and how do you do that in an agile and appropriate manner? Because getting hired into the IC is an arduous process. And so doing that and then allowing them to stay, what I used to phrase, and still do, technically sharp, making sure that you give them the bandwidth to keep their skills current. And how they're going to apply them is going to be different, but taking that advantage for them, you need to have a constant influx. And at IARPA, all of our folks are term limited appointments. So they come in with an idea they're passionate about. They're there for 3 to 5 years. They run that program or multiple programs in their area of expertise, and then they go on from there. So that allows for that constant influx of new ideas and new capabilities. And I'm not taking somebody who might be an expert in crypto and trying to make them do something in battery technology, because that just doesn't work as effectively.
Dr. Dixon, what are some of the tools you use and have at your disposal to make sure that you're staying on top of these trends?
Yeah, I'll just echo what both Catherine and Anne said. It is really about the people and making sure that you're hiring the best. From this seat, I don't really have the opportunity to sit in on as many of the technical discussions as my heart and my brain would like. So I have to leverage those exposure opportunities where people mention a topic, or research will mention a subject, or we'll have a briefing at an operational meeting, and I'll ask for a follow-up, and I'll do a desk side where I can go and actually watch the analysts, or I'll have them come and give me more details. And just knowing that you've got great people out there and who are more than happy to kind of bring you up to speed. From the other nice thing is, none of us are limited to just our agency. There are fora out there where we can learn about what the other agencies are doing. There are weekly reports that go out that kind of highlight some of the really cool capabilities. And it's easy enough to kind of hear about what some other agency is doing and then to go ask for information from them as well. That's always nice. And then sort of personally, my news feed has all sorts of science publications, and I, to the science journalists out there, love what you guys do in terms of keeping up, helping us, everyone, keep up with the really neat capabilities and developments happening in science all across the world, because that's sort of how I feed myself on sort of the outside work time. And, there's always something new coming through, and the linkages between what I'm seeing on the, on my news feed and even what we're trying to do internally in the intelligence community. Like, there are bridges that we can make there, and there are partnerships that we can find by looking at it that way as well.
Yeah. Dr. Marsh, you talked so passionately about the talent and bringing the right caliber of talent into your organization. I'll start with you, but I definitely want to hear from the other panelists. What is the key to attracting the best and brightest to an organization like yours, particularly when, for a new generation of young people coming into science and technology careers, government may not necessarily be the first place they think of when it comes to innovation?
Indeed, government's probably not. We are out there actively recruiting all the time. And so getting people to understand our problems, whether they be someone who happens to be inside the government already, or someone who is very, very interested in our capabilities. We have a number of true areas where we have thrived over time. Facial recognition is one, machine translation is another, quantum computing is a third. And so getting those going and intentionally looking for that next great program manager, working with them intentionally to develop a new start pitch. And if it's in their sweet spot, in their area of expertise, it just happens naturally. They come on board, they want to do this, and so they thrive. And that's key. And having a good idea and being passionate about it is necessary. And you still have to have some other skills. You've got to be able to be organized, to be self-starter, to drive to completion. We give people a lot of rein at IARPA to do what they do and do it really, really well. We give them the funding that it takes to make a difference in their technology area. And so we expect them to do that, and we guide them, but we don't micromanage them. And I think that is a winning formula to ensure the success of the programs, or the opportunity to take really high risk bets, right? Because we do high risk, high payoff. And that means some of it fails. We know that that's going to happen, and we have to engage to allow that to happen, because if we're doing everything as a sure bet, then we're not taking enough risk. And in the ARPA models, right, DARPA, IARPA, ARPA-E, we shouldn't be doing that. Some fraction of our programs are going to fail. Hopefully, we can recover some aspect of it or transition some aspect of it, but we've learned as a consequence of that, we've documented, and so that alone is a lesson learned that we can share with the community. Second?
Yeah, absolutely. Anne, you unmuted. It sounds like you have you wanted to chime in.
No, I'll share thoughts. Thank you for that. It's interesting. You asked the question about attracting, and I think if we define attracting as attracting each day so that folks want to stay. And I think it's a couple of things. One thing is giving people problems that make them feel they're part of something larger than themselves, but are really fulfilling, where they can bring their skill set to something that they feel they're making a difference. And a part of that is certainly the problems, but also having a culture of innovation where people feel that the ideas they have can be applied and can take hold. And I think the second thing, certainly to the point made earlier, it's sometimes hard to make your way all the way through to the IC, and we've had concepts of this, multi-decade IC career, at least here at NSA. So I think for us, being open to individuals who may come in, serve for a few years, go out, continue their career in academia, the private sector, or folks who come in mid-career, being open to more diverse careers and people with more diverse backgrounds is a big part of that too. In cybersecurity, specifically, one of the things that I find exciting is There are so many ways for people to get hands-on keyboard, practical, on-the-job experiences and knowledge that some of the traditional paths of college, master's, PhD programs are important, but they don't need to be exclusive. So we can open to a much more diverse community who can contribute to our cybersecurity mission than we may be able to do in other areas, which is particularly exciting.
A lot of what you both have described sound not unlike the innovation opportunity inside the private sector. Dr. Dixon, what are the things that private sector folks need to kind of unlearn, or what are the skills or traits they have to develop to be successful inside IC if they've come from private sector or if they've cycled in from a different kind of industry?
Okay, so I promised to answer your question, but I just want to tag on a small piece for that last one. I'm really proud of the internship program that we've developed because we find that it's one of those great ways to get a lot of new innovative thinking, a lot of the new skill sets that are out there. And we're able to not only bring in a more diverse part of our workforce by focusing on universities and getting the students excited about us, but we find that once you give them very meaningful projects to work on, they will come back year after year. And then our conversion rate to full-time employment was hovering at about the 70% mark with the interns. So it's a great way to kind of test out government to see if it's something that might be for you. With respect to people coming in from the outside, I think part of it is not making the assumption that automatically your ideas are the best ideas. I think Catherine mentioned it. You mentioned it. You have an assumption that there's an echo. You think that you know what happens in the IC. You think you know what the capabilities are, and then you come in and things are a little bit different. So I would say give some level of time to actually understand and learn about the environment and best how to work through the environment. Yes, government tends to be more bureaucratic in many ways than industry. However, once you figure out how things work, you can bring your new ideas in. And you'll find that there are a lot of innovative people and capabilities inside as well. And it's a matter of sort of merging the two, bringing your experiences from the outside in, and then figuring out how to interact and collaborate within the government to kind of get your ideas moved forward. It's probably the place that I've seen people struggle the most, where they assume that they're bringing something in that no one else has ever heard of. And that's not usually the case. It may be a different application, or it may be a different way of thinking about it, but they need to learn how to get their idea heard and how to get it transitioned into the operations within the government.
I'd love to ask each of you a little bit about how you as leaders are able to help foster a culture of innovation. There are obviously some constraints because of the part of the Department of Defense in which you work and because of the somewhat secretive nature of some of what you do. And of course, because of the rigors of the work, but you're all also leaders and have the opportunity to help set the tone for the organization. And I'd love to hear a little bit about things that you've brought uniquely to the role or changes you've been able to execute that you think have helped really drive a culture of innovation, which is sort of the theme of this talk. Let's start with Dr. Dixon, since we just left off with you.
I think the thing that has been the most exciting to me, and part of it has been, I would say, accelerated or even inspired during this pandemic time, is giving people the opportunity to come up with solutions, pushing authority down to a level where you don't have to have people ask for permission at many levels before they can get something done. COVID put us all in a place where we needed to figure out how to operate in a world in which most of our employees were outside of the building and not inside the building very quickly, and still wanted to get a lot of meaningful work done. And so we gave people a challenge. See what you can find out there in publicly available and commercially available data that can contribute to your mission. We've been astounded at the types of products and analysis that we've been able to do that has either been standalone products or products that we could then bring in and then enhance with classified information. So challenging people and allowing them to be creative, allowing them, especially during this time period, to, this might not have worked the way that it did. Failure was okay. Catherine mentioned failure as well. You have to be able and open to that. And so those are the things, just making sure that we're allowing people to know that their innovation, their proactivity, I'm going to go learn something new so I can figure out how to apply it to work, is welcome. And that's the kind of environment we want. We want people who are willing to go learn new things and then figure out how to make them work within the mission that we've given them.
Dr. Marsh, what are some of the things that you've done at IARPA to help drive a culture of innovation, and maybe changes that you've made or tweaks to process that have really helped stoke a new kind of culture?
Okay, so I can't agree more than what Stacey just said. So first of all, our assets go home at night. Our people are our assets, right? All the other stuff doesn't matter. And, you know, allowing them and empowering them, you know, they've got these great ideas that they are working on that's theirs, right? And trusting your people. You've got to trust your people. You don't need to see them to trust them. And that's a huge shift for the intelligence community, right? I mean, I had only been there a few months when I sent everybody home to work from home. And thank goodness for Stacey, my predecessor, getting the IQ environment up and running, because it enabled that for us. And they didn't miss a beat. So people are creative. You reward that. I'm a strong believer in complimenting people in private and in public and scolding in private. I really have kind of made sure that people know that they matter and give them that feedback regularly, even in this very distanced way, and regularly keep the lines of communication open. You can't over communicate, and just, you forget, you know, because I've been in the building the entire time, you forget that people don't stay connected in the same way when you can't just drop in on one another. So it's finding new ways and creative ways, as Stacey said, to let them bring solutions forward. And I'm a huge believer in teaching curiosity and enabling curiosity. People have to want to know why, who, how, and making known that it's okay to ask those questions. And some of the things that I've learned, and since I've been here, is when I have asked those questions, and people know that I ask a lot of questions, is, well, we've always done it that way. Well, but why are we doing it that way? That's not a good answer for me. And so in questioning and creating that culture where I question and then other people question, we've been able to streamline a number of different processes in our acquisitions pipeline and things like that, because we've just always done it that way and we don't have to. And, you know, fresh eyes help with that, but it's also that by me leading by example with asking the questions and knowing that that's okay, others follow. So I think that helps.
And what are some of the things that you've tried to do in your role as a leader to change the dynamic or enhance the innovation culture at NSA?
Yeah, so one of the things I've observed in looking over the years at innovations that were successful in taking seed and then scaling, and those that weren't, was that real innovation takes alignment across the organization, the mission, the problem you're seeking to solve, often the technical specialists who may come up with an approach, and then the policy and legal community who may say, well, we can't quite do that. Or so part for me of getting innovations and creating that culture is to say, every org is part of our innovation. We don't have one innovation org only in the technical area or only in our counterterrorism. Or in order for us to successfully scale, we need folks who would come from all those communities working together on one team. And then the team is rewarded as a team. So our attorneys, our policy, individuals who document new policy get the same award because they've been a part of making that success happen. So that's that first piece, because sometimes we can end up with kind of cultural silos that operate at a different pace, have a different understanding of the problem, and have a different sense of urgency about solving it. And we know that we need that aligned in that way. And for us in the cybersecurity organization, we had a really unique place because partially our goal was to say, our key goal is to say, let's ensure that we combine our threat intelligence about the latest techniques and tactics adversaries are using to break systems with practical advice on how to counter it, right? The threat intelligence issued at a top secret level is interesting. It's so much more powerful if it's at the unclassified level combined with real technical advice, software, hardware, techniques, TTPs, and how you protect against it. And to get to that really takes that alignment of our intelligence group folks, our vulnerability analyst folks, and certainly our attorneys and policymakers to say, how do we do that internally? So it's that's been, for me at least, trying to build one culture across those communities.
There have been some questions in the chat, and also I'm curious to hear from all of you about the relationship between each of your organizations and the private sector, and the opportunities there for partnership, but also ways where they might inspire innovations or innovation culture. Dr. Marsh, I know you know, a lot of what you do is highly classified, and so it's hard to necessarily have the same kind of relationship with the private sector. But you know, can you talk a little bit about the work that you may do with external parties like laboratories and universities, and how that contributes to innovation at IARPA?
So actually, one of the things that's great about IARPA is, to the maximum extent possible, we do full and open competition. And so we have active on the street. Tomorrow, we're going to be releasing a new BAA for a program, the Briar program. It should hit the street tomorrow. And we have 2 that just closed. So we're out there very, very publicly. We are the public face of the D&I. And we engage both with private sectors and we really want new ideas from all over the world to contribute to our programs. So we don't want to just narrowly focus on you know, folks who have to be domestic. So we want small companies, we want big companies, we have international, best minds in the world to bring to bear on our problems. It's more our partners in the transition end where things become classified and how we might use that technology after the fact. So we're really out there with everybody. In fact, I can't say the exact number, but we put a COVID BAA on the street earlier this year and received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of proposals that we're working our way through and making decisions on for awarding contracts. And some of those fighters are not people who have ever participated with IARPA before. So it's good to us to be able to use that mechanism. The other thing, we partner with the national labs, FFRDCs, and the UARCs to be our T&E partners. So as well as government laboratories where there's technical expertise and testing capabilities like NIST, for example. So we do both sectors, T&E one way, and participation in our programs another way.
And have you seen those relationships change or evolve over the years, particularly those with the labs and the private industry? Are you working more closely together? Has the nature of the relationship changed over time?
So yes and no. So sometimes there's some bad behavior that comes up over time, and so you have to kind of put horse back in the barn and take care of those things. But for the most part, what we see is more and more opportunities. Pre-COVID, we were out there regularly engaging with universities, getting them interested in our programs so that we could get more participants. We're doing that virtually now. We're actively looking at and using Amy, which is to bring more diversity to our profile. And we are trying to engage with, we are engaging with them for the postdoc participation this year to make sure that we can get even more schools engaged with the S&T aspects of innovation, not just for IARPA programs, but for intelligence community problems writ large.
You know, one thing I hear from vendors, third parties, startups all the time is, you know, they do complain that government agencies are hard to work with. Dr. Dixon, are there things that you are able to do at your agency to make it easier for third parties, external folks to come together with you and innovate?
I think one of the things you'll see in government a lot, and one of the things that IARPA in particular does really well, focusing on prize challenges and then the broad agency announcements that Catherine mentioned. They are contracting methods that are more flexible, more streamlined, can be a lot faster than sort of a traditional, I'm going to tell you exactly what I need and then you're going to propose to it. So those are things that NGA is undertaking a lot more. And actually during this COVID time period, we had 3 or 4 prize challenges. We just put out a competition using other transactional authority, so another tool in our acquisition toolbox. So we're getting very creative in finding ways to be quicker, because we have definitely heard that feedback that it can be a long time for us to get things on contract. So how do we more quickly move, especially when technology moves so quickly? How do you get new ideas, new players, people who've never worked with government because of the fact that they thought it was too cumbersome, to be interested in not only the challenges you have to solve, but in actually working with you? And price challenges and broad agency announcements have been great tools to use.
You know, the intelligence community and the Department of Defense more broadly have brought so many innovations and technologies to mainstream society. We have all benefited so much from the work that different agencies have done, and everything from GPS to certain vaccines all have come out of government agencies. I'd love to ask all of the panelists to talk a little bit about what you need from either taxpayers or lawmakers or other parts of the ecosystem in order to keep doing the innovation work you're doing. And I'll start with Anne. A few people in the chat have mentioned that you're a little bit hard to hear. I don't know if you can maybe move a little closer to your microphone.
Sure, absolutely. I'm actually laughing at that comment about an NSAer who's hard to hear. Folks typically laugh at that we're good at listening, and so that's I think a first part is, as many of us talked through, what helps us, what is the root of our success in innovation and in technology breakthroughs is people. So people coming in, giving us a chance. You know, it's understanding that in the intelligence community, the Department of Defense community, there are hard problems that we seek to solve, and sometimes those problems are solved in the shadows. So it's upon us to build greater trust in talking about our missions and talking about the cultures that we have here, so that people want to come and work within those cultures. And then I think the second piece of that is giving us flexible ways to hire individuals, bring in individuals, in some cases, help compete with private sector salaries. We know we need to compete, and we can, on the type of mission problems they'll work on solving, but sometimes it's really challenging for folks to take a step out of their lives and come and join. So I would say, summing that up, recognizing first that what makes us who we are the great technical people that we can attract and retain. And anything to help us incentivize that is great. And then it's upon all of us to ensure that the broader population has visibility into the kinds of problems we seek to solve, so they want to join us and be a part of that.
Dr. Dixon, same question for you. What can the public do to help advance the mission of innovation at your agency?
Stephanie, I'll be a little broad with this one. I need to see more trust from the American people for government in general. You know, the intelligence community, I know that we have a lot of secrets, but we really go out of our way to be transparent, to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And I think what people don't seem to understand is there is the democratic way of life through American values. It's not guaranteed. There are countries out there who want to be better than us. They want their country to raise in stature while ours decreases. And if we don't have more partnerships with the American people, whether that's with academia and industry and those who want to help support government, help government be successful so that we can help keep the country safe, we're really jeopardizing our future. So I want trust. I want faith in our government. I want faith in the things that we're trying to do, and an understanding that, you know, at the end of the day, I want to keep this country safe. I want to keep this country prosperous, and I want to make sure that our values are values that we can define and determine. So anything that the public can do to help that is what I'm asking.
Dr. Marsh, any thoughts on how we can help IARPA succeed?
actually just continue to participate and to, we have the opportunity to bring all these minds to bear, and we want you to continue to give us your ideas. We are really blessed because we don't, like Stacey said, we don't go out with I want to buy this widget that's this tall and whatever. We go out with a problem, and we're looking for your great ideas to bring them to bear on this. And so how do you continue to do that? And I agree with what Stacey said also in the, how do you use grants, transactions, other authorities so that we are agile with our acquisition authorities to get people under contract quickly. I'm pushing my program managers. It's not acceptable to me that you go through source selection and, it's 6 months later before I see, the down select memo. Absolutely not. I'm like, if I don't see it in X period of time, we're going to have a conversation here. So I respect that it takes time for people who are out there and they bid on this work. We want to be respectful with them and get them an answer as soon as we can. That's what's going to keep them coming back, right? So being smart and respect. They've got great ideas.
Yeah, I love hearing the sense of urgency from all three of you. In our time remaining, Dr. Dixon, you did raise the specter of America's place in the world. I'd love to hear each of the panelists talk about American competitiveness vis-a-vis technology and perhaps vis-a-vis intelligence technology. Do you feel like America continues to play a leading role, or should we be concerned about the fact that so many other countries, and China in particular, are playing catch up or taking the lead in some cases in areas like artificial intelligence and certainly doing a lot of experimentation in quantum? Anne, I'll start with you. How do you feel about where American technology sits in the world?
So I think the model of American technology of pressing on or aiming for open standards, of aiming for open innovation, is certainly one that has been at the root of American competitiveness. It's what attracted immigrants from all over the world. It's what enabled US companies to be some of the leading and largest in a number of different areas. When we look at certain more state-driven models like the Chinese model, we're certainly seeing it making focused advancements in areas of new R&D. And I think as a result, both across the intelligence community and the research community, we've put focus areas on those same things to ensure that we can remain competitive. One area where there is a bit of a divergence in approach, where we are looking to see how do we ensure the American model can be competitive, is in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning that's fundamentally built on large amounts of data that can be brought together for insights. In the American model, much of that data is across the private sector. So in many cases, many of those models and that insight, in order for that broader competitiveness to be advanced, and in order for us as an economy and as a country to get the full benefit of that, we need to ensure that we have both sharing of those models and ability to talk through them and ability to understand how to ensure that they're used most broadly to solve broad sets of mission problems, not unique to who owns the data specifically. And I think that's one area where certainly as we look to the future, a Western model, both from protecting privacy, but also making the most of data so that the insights and models are fully leveraged to something that is a challenge we have to think through.
Dr. Dixon, American competitiveness when it comes to technology, and particularly perhaps some of the technologies that you mentioned at the top of the conversation as being things that you're particularly excited about in the area of satellites and data.
So the thing that sort of worries me is sort of maintaining the advantage that we've had for so long. And if you look at the, our sort of our placement in the global competition for students, American scores in math and science, where our student body is, how well are we preparing individuals? In the intelligence community, we're hiring American citizens for the most part for government jobs. And yet universities are graduating a lot more foreign students in some of these high-tech areas. So we need to commit to more focus on science and technology, just with the American students and citizens in general. With respect to the technologies, the nice thing is the government doesn't have to lead in everything, right? We pick the areas where we need to lead. There's some that we want to influence or tailor for intelligence challenges, and then there's some where we just need to be able to adopt it more quickly. So picking those battles, picking the places where we really need to prioritize our leadership, and then really focusing those and resourcing those long term is where we need to sort of partner government, executive branch, government legislative branch, to be able to then have the support we need to be able to really focus on those long-term initiatives. So I'm excited by the industry that we've seen. I'm excited that we can leverage both foreign and commercial industry in the US, but in those places where we need to lead, we really need to have more focus on getting more American students to focus on math and science. And I hope people are getting excited about that and that we can inspire some folks to choose that path.
Dr. Marsh, I'm going to give you the last word.
Okay, so, I cannot agree with what Stacey said more. In fact, in thinking about this, we can't start in college. We've got to start in grade school. We've got to get people excited in grade school. We've got to get our math and science teachers, the teachers at the elementary level, to be excited about the STEM fields and all across, right? Because if we capture the minds, the hearts and minds of the children, then and teach them to be curious, right? Teach them to ask the who, what, when, where, why, how questions. Okay, then they're going to follow their path and dreams into the world of science, whether it be for the government or the private sector, but we will have that further investment. So I think that if we want help from the taxpayers, it's getting the primary, middle school and high school education to have much more of an emphasis on science. I mean, my niece went to high school, graduated from high school. She's a sophomore at UVA now. She went through chemistry without having a lab. How can that possibly be, right? And it's just not, because there wasn't enough funding, and that's got to change. And I think fundamentally, when we can do that, the reason I'm a scientist today is because I watched when I was 8 years old, us land on the moon, right? And how could we possibly do that? Those are the things that are going to get that investment in our future to get us where we need to be. So sorry I'm on my soapbox, but that is something that really matters to me.
Yeah, well, I would say that all three of you are definitely individuals who can inspire a new generation of scientists and technologists. I want to thank our panelists, Stacey Dixon, Catherine Marsh, and Neuberger. Thank you so much for being with us for this conversation about innovation in the public sector. I want to thank Aspen Institute and the Aspen Digital crew and